Well, first of all, thank you all for being here, and I hope that I don't disappoint you as far as what I'm going to present. There's about 40 slides, and a lot of these photos probably, I think I counted them, 20 of them probably haven't been seen in over 100 years because they were in a collection at the Monterey County Historical Association and our society, and so I just recently scanned them, so I know that a lot of them haven't been seen. In particular, probably even this one here. In fact, somebody just said, "What year is this car?" And I says, "Well, it's probably about an '08 because it's a right-hand drive and there's no windshield, and it's also got lights that they used to use carbide on." So anyway, the name of it is the Bridges of Southern Monterey County, and of course it's presented by the San Antonio Valley Historical Association and the Monterey County Rural Agriculture and Rural Life. One of the things that is kind of fun to do is to when you scan photographs and stuff, it's kind of cool. So this particular photograph was taken by Lou Hare. He was the county surveyor from about 1890 to about 1920, and this was one of the bridges he built. And this is a quote from the King City, California, the first 100 years. "The rivers assaulted on bridges was an annual occurrence, and the bridges often lost the battle." And that is extremely true. Some people call the Salinas River the upside down river. I would say it's more of a schizophrenic river. It doesn't know whether it's just a little meandering kind of, just kind of a little bit of a water, or it's a raging torrent. And it's both, and it does it a lot. This is 1909 when this particular picture was taken on San Lorenzo Creek. This is 198. It has been replaced now with a newer bridge. It's right by the Me Ranch, right at the bottom of the Mustang Grade. And it's a beautiful, I think it's a beautiful bridge. Later on, there's a construction picture where they're pouring that bridge. I'll show you. Got to use my app. So we'll start out just first of all, just talking about the Salinas River. This particular picture obviously was taken in 1906 from the earthquake, San Francisco. What happened in 1906, obviously by this is a postcard that I happen to have in our collection. And this shows this drop in the Salinas River of 10 feet. What happened is not only did the river drop, or around the river drop, but where the river entered into the Monterey Bay changed in 1906. Originally, it kind of took this big meander and went up toward Moss Landing and came out through the slough there. And then now it comes out more like by Marina. And so there's an app for everything, so that's an app on my phone here. So this particular one, what we're gonna do is just kind of run down start at the Monterey Bay, and then work into South County here, but just wanted to show you some of the bridges that are on it. There was a bridge or ferry for wagon bridges. First of all, originally when these bridges were put in, most of them were called wagon bridges because they were put in prior to automobiles. And so in the 1800s, so automobile really didn't become a real car until in the 1900s. So this particular bridge, though, I just put it here to as a placeholder. It's a railroad bridge. It was used by the railroad. It was actually for the Del Monte Express that went to the Del Monte Hotel because the Del Monte Hotel was owned by the railroad people, and that's why they built it there, so they could get ridership on their railroads. So this bridge is still in existence. It was built in 1913. It's not being used. It's kind of rusting away there. But the interesting thing is it's called at Neponset, and I had never even heard of that name. It's an Indian name that means man sleepwalking, I think, something to that effect. But they're actually, if you look on your map or Google Earth, you'll see a Neponset, and it's just slightly north of Marina, and this is about where the Salinas River comes into the Monterey Bay. This is a great picture here. This is a postcard, and what I've done here is, see, we'll try to use this, huh? So over in this area is Salinas. This is where Spreckles is. This is called Hilltown. They actually say here, but actually this is the Hilltown Bridge. There used to be a little area out by Salinas called Hilltown, kind of at the end of Spreckles Boulevard right there. There's a little monument that's still there. I think there's a cabinet shop and a storage building there now. What's also interesting, and the reason I actually collected this particular photograph, was because this is the Associated Oil pipeline pumping station. And many of you may remember there used to be a pump station down on Bitterwater Road where it meets 25. There was one in Soledad, right where it goes out to the Pinnacles. On the north side of Gonzales, where the service station is, there used to be a pump station. The pump line started in Coalinga, and it was 105 miles long, and it ended up on the Monterey Wharf right there by Cannery Row. Unfortunately, back in the 20s, it was struck by a lightning, and they had a big fire there in Monterey. But this, anyway, obviously got inundated with water. Actually, if you look, this bridge is very close to the current Highway 68 bridge. And if you actually look, you'll actually see the slabs for these buildings that were there still. The people used to have a pumpkin patch down there. They used to do it. This is another bridge that doesn't exist anymore. This particular one was at the Spreckles Sugar Factory. This is from the flood of 1911. And right now, the only thing that exists of this bridge is the piers. There's a couple of these piers that are still in place, if you look at them. So this is what happens after you've had a high water. It undermined part of the bridge, and either somebody didn't notice or it went untaken care of. And so they were moving sugar beets across that bridge, and the bridge collapsed. And unfortunately, the locomotive ended up in the middle of the river there. What fascinates me about this one is this walking bridge right here. It's like, what is that for? My little, yeah, there we go. My pointer works again. There we go. There we go. That's a walking bridge. I mean, this guy's kind of, that bridge must wash out every year, though, you know. So moving on south now that we've kind of moved from the beginning. This is the Chular Bridge. This is a great photo here by Mr. Trout that was taken in 1908. And one thing that happened about this particular time in the history of Monterey County, the King City Bridge was built in 1888, as well as Hilltown, which those were kind of the first two bridges that were built across the Salinas River. But what happened is that the other towns like Soledad, Chular, San Ardo, Bradley, San Lucas, all wanted bridges. And it wasn't just for, Highway 101 didn't exist. The reason that they wanted bridges was for economic benefit. Because what happened is that the river would, during certain periods of time, would split the community, and people that were growing crops on one side could not get to the railroad on the other side. And the railroads, 1873 is when it came to Soledad, and it was a very important, thing to get your, if you raised grain like Bill or something, you wanted to get it to the market, you had to get it on the train. So this was a bridge that was built. This particular bridge was built by this gentleman right here, and this is Lou Hare. He was the county surveyor, like I told you a little bit earlier. And obviously, he's a pretty confident gentleman because he's standing on his own bridge, pretty high water there. And I believe Lou Hare was an amateur photographer. I believe this was actually taken by his daughter for him, that particular one. His wife died fairly early, and he told his daughter that she could do anything. She eventually went to Stanford, and actually lived a fairly long life. She wrote some stories that were in the Monterey Herald about her with her dad taking a bunch of these pictures. And one of the stories was that they had taken a picture right there by Chular, and Lou wanted her to stand on this piece of ground so he could have perspective. And so after she came back, it fell into the water. And so she was saying, hey, but you know how dads are, This was one that was just a total delight to find. This is the Gonzales Salinas River Bridge, which is the original bridge. Obviously, the one now is actually under repair from the current flood we had. This was taken in June 12th, 1897. That's great when you actually have the exact date. And Miss Wiedemann, who is right here, she's driving a golden spike with a silver hammer to complete the bridge. And the Wiedemann name was a name, her father had a large dry goods store in Gonzales and in King City at one time. And so this was a great delight. And what happened is after they had this great thing here, they removed to a grounds where they could have a barbecue. And according to the article, they cooked basically 1 ton of meat. So they had cooked 2,000 pounds of meat. So it was quite a party. This was a big deal. But what was also interesting about this particular thing here is Gonzales had visions of this being the gateway to Tasajara Springs, okay? And according to the article, when they did this bridge, that this was a kind of a done thing, that they were going to run a road from Gonzales to Tasajara, and that was going to save 18 miles off the trip to Tasajara. And so, obviously, that's, I go over that road every year. You know, how about you? I mean, I don't think that road exists. They never did make a road from Gonzales to Tasajara Springs. Now we're dropping down to Soledad. Once again, this is the Soledad Bridge. And it says right here, Paraiso Springs Road. And the reason it says Paraiso Springs Road is because 101 didn't exist. The end of the railroad ended in 1873 for 13 years in Soledad, and people would come from the Bay Area, San Francisco, what have you, to come down to take in the Paraiso Springs. And you know, a lot of times they would travel down and stay for weeks at a time. And so this was the bridge that led to that. Okay, and then the next one that was right there. Let's see, I jumped ahead. I'm sorry. But this is the bridge that was built to replace the one that we saw there. In 1914, they built this bridge. This was a steel truss bridge. And then in 1938, they were going to build a new bridge. And this is the beginning of the new bridge that is going to go across here. And what happened is that we had a large flood in 1938, and it washed out this section of the bridge. And so what they did is not only did they had to build a new bridge, but they had to make a temporary bridge across here. And they started it, and then within 2 weeks it washed out, and they had to do it again. And so what happened is that, according to the articles, that the cities like Greenfield and King City and Soledad, was complaining about the economic downturn, because a lot of people were not using at this time 101 then, but they were using Metz Road, but they were also going down the Central Valley, and so they were losing economics. So they were really at pressure. The night that they got this done, they got it done about midnight. They had a big party, and they actually burned the sign that used to be on the other end of the bridge that said it was washed out. So it had a sign burning thing. And so of course they had a big party when they finished this one here too. But to go back to once back, this one here, today, if you cross this Soledad Bridge on your way north, this bridge would have been to your right or to the south, okay? Or upriver, I guess you might say, just for reference purposes. Okay, wrong way. Okay, so this is another interesting little bridge. This is the bridge at Arroyo Seco and across the river, and right there at Soledad. And this is what would typically happen, is the bridge would be built, then the river would change, and then they would extend an approach, and then the river would change again, and they would make a longer approach. And then eventually the bridge would either wash out or they would replace it. It just seemed like that over the years that there's just been a continued battle with that. Okay, so this is another little bridge here that no longer exists. This is on Thompson Gulch, just slightly north of King City. There's just basically a water overpass now. This bridge, according to the article, had some issues with high water, but also what happened was it was dismantled and was going to be used on the San Antonio River to make a road to Los Burros. Now, I don't know if that ever happened or not. or if this bridge is part of the bridge that is at Fort Hunter Liggett. I do not know, but anyway, that's what the article said. So this is the King City Bridge. This was in the other room there. This is the original bridge. This is a wood truss bridge. But one of the things that happened, well, this was built by the California Bridge Company in 1888, and it has, these are pilings, and then they have just these coffers around them to do that. And so here we are they built this bridge in 1888, and this is an article that's dated, in 1889. It says, the western approach to the bridge is reported to be in rather unsafe condition. So this is 1 year. And it says, as known, no pilings were driven or done there. The structure resting on posts which were sunk not sunk into the ground. It was claimed that this area perfectly safe as water never ran here. The last storm proved to be contrary to the case, as the water flowed underneath this part nearly all the time. The posts have been moved and twisted about, and in some cases the sand has been washed away from their feet, leaving them held up by the bridge instead of holding the bridge up. So the battle with the river has been an ongoing thing. So in this particular case, this is taken from the Pine Canyon side, just for reference purposes. And these two buildings right here this was a water pump station for the Claus Spreckels system, and where that is. And this is virtually goes right into the park, because we're going to be at the other end of this just in a few minutes. Of course, this is Bill Barbree is going to take the lead on this when we get there, so I won't talk too much about it. But the only thing that I want to mention here is this bridge is really unique because it's two different bridges. And what happened was, I don't know. But one of these is a Pratt truss, and one of these is a Warren truss. So for those of you who are interested, when we get there, we can actually see where the two bridges are connected and the two different types of trusses that we use. You can sort of see that by this Xing here, and this one not having this having a big X. And then here's a plaque that is still on the bridge. But here's what it actually looks like. I took this picture here about 10 years ago. And then this is what it looks like currently. And Bill thinks that maybe some equipment or something came across there and hit the edge of that and maybe broke that off. What is interesting, though, is that this is cast iron, okay? And so when you make cast iron, you always want to spell somebody's name correctly, but that name is spelled wrong right there. So it had two T's. And the only reason I know that is because my mom loved to spell that, because we lived on Talbot Street and it had two T's. But the only problem at Talbot Street, at one end of the sign, it was only one street long, and it had two T's at one end and one T at the other. So okay, so here we go. This is the San Ardo Bridge. This is a Luhaire Bridge also. This is a lovely picture that Howard Strohn will talk about in a little later. This is in 1908. We found some great pictures of actually constructing these piers here, which is very unusual, and so he'll get to explain that to you. I blew up some pictures. You'll be able to look at those at the Grange there. But I just love this picture. This is just amazing. Mm-hmm. The one thing that is missing from this picture, unfortunately, is in this bay right here, there's a boat that is hung from cables. And supposedly, according to the article, it was to show that by land, by bridge, and by water. And unfortunately, we can't see that boat up there, but... So this is the Bradley Bridge, which is very hard, had a very hard, difficult time finding it. This is not a real good photograph, but this is the bridge that would have been, as we cross the current bridge, as we get into Bradley, it'll be on your right-hand side, and you'll be able to see these piers. These are pile-driven piers. There are concrete piers that are there now that were put and replaced this. This bridge, I just did not have a lot of information on. Very difficult to find sometimes. This is kind of a fun little picture here. This was taken in 1939. This is the existing bridge being built that was built in 1940. Here's the truss bridge that was took down, and behind it is the railroad bridge. And so we actually have three bridges. We have the railroad bridge, we have the existing highway bridge, and we have the bridge that is being built for 1940. This is at what we call East Garrison, or right by Bradley. This would be the last bridge that we will go to today. And here's the railroad bridge, and this is when it was built in 1940. This is still in use. Looks a little kind of decrepit, I know, but it was built in 1914. This plaque has obviously suffered the same fate as that other one. The thing that I was talking to Howard Strohn about this yesterday, but see, it almost looks like it's got two sets of tracks. And so we think that maybe Camp Roberts had a narrow gauge railroad, and they used this to go between the two places. That's the only thing that we can figure out. Okay, so here's a bridge that everybody probably remembers. This is what we call, or what I call, the Green Bridge at Arroyo Seco. And Craig Wiley, who was a member of McCarlem, he always said, well, that bridge was built in the war, and I remember it being built, and da-da-da-da-da. And I just said, that bridge had to have been there before the war. And so then I found an article in the King City Rustler that said that in 1943, that the Arroyo Seco Bridge was being replaced by part of the old Bradley Bridge that was tore down when they built the new bridge in 1930. And the reason they did it was because it was 2 feet wider than the existing bridge that was on there. So we've all been across that. It's pretty narrow. It's one car, you know. So can you imagine? It was 2 feet narrower originally. And why it ends up at a 90-degree turn at the end is beyond me.
Right. Yeah.
So this is so there are 5 or 6 bridges in Monterey County that are still of the original Pratt or Warren Truss design. This particular one is not owned by Monterey County. It's at Fort Hunter Liggett. So I guess it does or doesn't count. I don't know, but just wanted to include that so you knew what it was like. This is a bridge that is out on Nacimiento Lake Drive. It's on the San Antonio River, just below the dam. And this was built in 1921, and this bridge is being replaced as we speak. The new bridge is in position. I think it only has to be paved now. And this bridge is slated to be torn down. And so if you are interested in lobbying to leave this as a walking bridge, I would suggest that you talk to your representative very quickly. They're talking about tearing this bridge down within the next month or two. And so I think it should be left as a monument myself. This is dropping on down to the very end of Monterey County, and this is Parkfield Bridge. There are 2 of these bridges. I don't have a picture of the other one. I took this a while back when the wife and I were eating there at the restaurant. This one was built in 1955. It's a great ride if you want to go over this. It eventually ends up on Kalinga 198 over the Parkfield grade, partially dirt. There's beautiful drive in the springtime if you guys want to do that. This is kind of a rare photo. This is of the Plato Bridge, and this bridge was taken, this was when it was being built. You can see that they haven't even finished the approaches yet. But this was Lou Hare. He did another bridge. This was another one of his many bridges. And this was taken down for the building of the San Antonio, or the Lake Nacimiento Dam. Lake San Antonio, wow. Anyway, it was taken down and no longer there, obviously. And a couple of the miscellaneous bridges here. This is a railroad bridge that was at just north of the Elm Avenue crossing there on Chalone Creek during the major flood of 1911. One thing about the railroad is they had rolling equipment that they immediately come in and start rebuilding the bridge. And I think it took them only a week or so to replace the bridge. So it was, because that held up the railroad. So this is the Peachtree Bridge that we saw at the very beginning. And this is actually when they're building it. And this is one of Lou Hare's pictures. I count about 10 people in this bridge, in this photo. And then there's these wooden containers over here. I believe that those are for the cement. And they're obviously mixing the cement on site. In Lou Hare's diary, he said that he was going to Peachtree to pay the men. Because they were living there, they were basically were camping out. And my question is, why are you going to pay them in Peachtree? I mean, where are they going to spend their money at? You know, I mean, it's like, what are they going to go to Priest Valley? You know, I mean, I don't know. So it's just, I guess they go to San Lucas. I guess they go down there and go to the bar and. So now we're going to just briefly. Now we're going to concentrate on the King City Bridge, and not only am I talking about the bridge, but I'm talking about what the river has done to the land that is around this bridge. This is basically the original bridge that was built. It was 15 sections wide. It was a wood truss bridge, and this is the King City side. So here we are, right here on the dirt, right? Okay. And this beautiful woman here, I do not know who that is, and this is an interesting little drawing here. I'm not quite sure what that was. So, but I'm not. Just okay. Look at this right here. So now we'll learn. Okay, so there we are. There's the end of that bridge right there, and look what's in here. Okay, so there's 500 feet. Okay. And then, of course, this is something that, we've probably all seen. We've seen the flying duck. This is going out to that bridge because they were using this. The problem is people now in Halone and Pine Canyon, all were being, they were coming into King City to get supplies. So now they couldn't. So some of the stores actually opened up stores basically in wagons on the other side of the river to help those people. So we got a 500-foot gap. Okay, so what they did is they built this section right here, these three sections. Here's the original bridge, here's the new sections. These three piers still exist in the middle of the river. And we're going to go look at those just in a few minutes. Okay, so keep in mind that there's those three piers. There's another one right here, right on the land. It's right on the land. Okay, there's those three piers right out there. You see those now? Now the one pier that was in the land is right there. So there's four of them. But now look at this. So there's more dirt that is gone. And then it washes out again. So if you were coming to King City in that era in your wagon or your automobile, here would have an address. That says King City Reach Hotel is what that has on it. Right there. And the Reach Hotel was at First and Broadway. And so it's washed out again. So now we're going to rebuild it. In 1920, they decide to build a new bridge. It's called a pony truss bridge. These are the trusses right here. They're all stacked up. We're still using some steam here to move these things around. Here's the original bridge in the background. There's that joint that we just looked at right there between the two old and new bridges. So they're building a new bridge. And then we build the new bridge, and there it is. And so this was the bridge that I grew up with, okay? Built in 1920. It replaced the original 1888 building. And so a lot of people say, oh yeah, I remember the old bridge. Well, the old bridge, yeah, it was, but this is the bridge that I remember. And with my sister being here, what did we used to sing when we came home to King City? See the bridge. I see the bridge. We would try to decide who could see the bridge first. So so we would sing this ridiculous thing about I see the bridge. So anyway, this is the bridge that I grew up with. Eventually it was taken down in about 1967 or so. But this is a great picture. This was taken from the Pine Canyon site. Here's another approach. See how they keep adding on these things. It goes from here. There are those three piers that are out there. So we're going to go see those today. You'll see there's another bridge in here. Now, let's take a look at this, an overhead. Okay, so here's the overhead. And I know this is confusing, and I apologize. So it's taken in 1956. So here is the 1955 bridge that still exists, and it's the northbound bridge. They changed the end of it just slightly. Here would be KFC if it was there back then. They probably didn't. KFC wasn't even in existence. So what they did on the 1955 bridge, that is the northbound, they built this right here, this jetty, and they filled this in so they wouldn't have the bridge as long. Because this is the 1920 bridge that I was telling you about. It went clear down here to what they call the King City Curve, and then went north, and that goes right into Pine Canyon. This little section still exists. You just have to get dirty to find it. It's right as you cross the, right there where the monument is for San Antonio. You cross there, that you can go down there in the weeds and you can find that. It still has the white line down the middle of it. Anyway, this bridge was torn down, and then, so what I did is, I said, why were those piers out there? So here it is. So I drew a line. This was the end of town. This was called the county road. I put Broadway, but it's actually the county road. If I extended it out all the way, it comes out right to where those piers are. So the original bridge for King City went from here to here, just right here. So this to here has been washed out. That's how much. Karen and I went down with a roller, and it's between 1,500 and 1,700 feet of bank that is missing from this thing. Now, what caused it? I don't know. The San Lorenzo River or San Lorenzo Creek comes in over here, but look how wide this is in comparison.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the worst possible place to build a bridge. But anyway, so now of course there's an existing southbound bridge that connects right through here. So, but anyway, that gives you kind of an idea. Hope that makes it. Here's Halone Road, and it went up. Actually, Halone Road now goes straight across a bridge right going this direction, but this right here dropped down right below where Linda Strohn used to live. There's still a bridge down in there that they used to cross right there. So this is kind of a random picture here, but what I wanted to do is just show you kind of a comparison between. We just had a very high water. We had, some damage to our golf course. It was a real tragedy to, what's happened. This is the San Lorenzo Creek. This was in March 1911. This railroad bridge was built in 1902, and it still exists. This was the First Street Bridge. Okay, and there was a guy named E.E. Mansfield who had his Rio, and he came across this bridge, and it literally fell down just about the time he crossed the bridge. And so we have a picture of this bridge in our book, but I actually found this bridge where it actually was completely fell down. So thought that was kind of a nice little shot there. So just to kind of wrap it up here, I don't know how we doing on time, buddy. Doing okay? So anyway, obviously it's a San Antonio Valley Historical Association in partnership with Monterey County Rural and Ag Museum. And I just really thank them for letting us use this great facility. But so as not to disappoint, I brought, obviously, you might have thought of the bridges of Madison County or whatever that was that Clint Eastwood did. I'm sure that's what brought half you people here. So of course, I had to search for a covered bridge. Well, this is kind of a stretch. I know it is, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is the Pajaro River Bridge, and we're standing in Santa Cruz County. The nice bridge over here on this side is Monterey County. And if I get the story correct, is that Santa Cruz did not want to spend money to build a new bridge, and Monterey ended up building this section, and they hooked on to the old covered bridge that used to be across the Pajaro. So we're actually in Santa Cruz. So I wanted to show you what the only covered bridge that I knew of that was connected with Monterey County. But this says right up here, it says automobiles slow down to 8 miles per hour. And so I thought that was kind of great. So we're actually looking at Pajaro, which obviously just flooded this year. So anyway, so I really appreciate you guys paying attention and great time.
Anyway, all right. So
Is this a pier right here?
these were jetties, okay? And you can see on the other side here where it goes across here. And what they were doing was they were building these structures, and I could have bored you to spit, but Lou Hare designed these where they would take brush and put it into these wire and cable things. There's still some of them in the river, And that would, the idea was to divert the water. And you were just saying, you know, that originally that you remember the river going down the middle until they built something on the other side to help do that with. So who knows? You know, they were built to divert the water is what they were for.
Yeah.
So you can see some of these abutments out here.
Right there.
I don't see them.
Well, see where the power poles are?
The modern bridge.
No, see where the power poles are? Right there, there's two of them. I can see two of them right there. Those power poles are connected onto those.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, right there.
If you go on a walk, you can see them.
So there's actually three of them still
Oops, sorry.
existing out there.
Mind your
No,
way.
that's right. Don't fall off that
And
cliff.
like I say, Karen and I walked with a measuring out to the other end, and it's about 1,500. That's where the bank was out there.
Yeah, I remember.
I showed you the progression of how it happened.
Yeah.
So pictures supposedly don't lie.
John, tell me about the Ashnick Foundation.
Oh yes. So Karen just reminded me what the Etchenicks was a family here in King City, and they when they passed, they set up what they call the Etchenick Foundation. It's here in King City. I believe that Mr. Borzini is the managing person of it. And so Karen and I applied to the Etchenicks, and they graciously gave us $2,000 to print some of these big photographs. And so we started out at Hestia. Hestia Coffee has one that we printed. That was from a glass negative that we had. And then like this picture here, and we've had 6 others, I think, that we have printed. We just hung one. One's going to be hung in the city school district office. There's one of that building when it was in. There's one downtown right now in the old Daily Shoes. We just hung one in the pizza parlor there on the corner of 3rd and Broadway, and there's another one. Well, the other one was in the room that we had in there. That will be hung someplace in King City also.
Yeah, just to get them all around town.
Yeah. So the idea is just trying to, you know, so because what happens is that, you know, a lot of people are stopping in King City for lunch. You know, there's a lot of Cal Poly people that, you know, stop at, obviously, La Petronca. And the idea is to have these where people can see them and they can appreciate, you know, the history of our area, because we have some great history here. That's been, you know, King City is, you know, has a deep history, you know, and roots for families and stuff like that. So I think it's really great.
Any questions?
You might mention the sandbanks that are along the
Oh, yeah.
bank.
Yeah, well, that's obviously is, you know, the Salinas River at its best, you know, eroding this land right here. And obviously it's in the same area as it's already happened, because that's where those, you know, bridge abutments are. So what we're going to do is we're going to go next to San Lucas Bridge, and Bill is going to give us a presentation, and we'll be there. But like Karen says, watch out, there's some poison oak on the railings and stuff. I have another picture of that, of the plaque, because the plaque is kind of up high and there's poison oak growing on that pier. And so, and I'm sure that if you don't get it, you know, you'll say, oh, I don't get poison oak. But nobody wants to get poison oak. Nobody wants to. Bill.
What side of the bridge are we going to park?
We're going to go down Halone Road. We're going to leave here. We're going to go across the bridge. We're going to go down to San Lucas Road, and we're going to go toward San Lucas, and we're going to end up on the west side of the bridge. Okay, and then Rava has a driveway there, and then also there's parking on the other side. You actually park on both sides of the road right there.
Okay, so we're happy to introduce you to Bill Barbree. He's lived out in this area. He can maybe tell you just a little bit about his experiences out here. But his father and his grandfather have used this bridge. So we asked Bill to tell you a little bit about some of his memories. And I see he has some notes. Isn't that fabulous? Yeah. Great. Okay, you guys.
Story.
Because my memory is not that good.
We all have that problem. So, okay, so go ahead. Take it away, Bill.
Okay. The first word. Starting back, my main memories come from when I went to grammar school, which started in 1950 to 1958. I went to San Lucas Grammar School. So, in rough calculations, I've probably been over this bridge 25,000 times. So, going back, this bridge has been very important to us because you had all this area all the way over around here was all planted in grain at once upon a time. Now it's in vegetables and grapes. But at that time, all your trucking went to San Lucas. Lockwood people brought their trucks to San Lucas because it's the nearest railroad center. So in 1937, they made a report on this bridge, and it was recommended that you could put 10 tons of loose cattle across it. Now, my dad did bring cattle from Mexico by railroad. We brought them from the corrals in San Lucas across the bridge into this ranch right here, which we had leased at the time. Not only that, it says their recommendation was, gotta look at my notes here. Is posted for 7 tons per vehicle, 9 tons for a semi. Now this goes back to 1937, so you didn't have, they were probably old trucks and trailers at that time, and 11 tons for like a set of doubles. Also, when I was in grammar school, they repaired the bridge, and on the east side, it was one of those wooden bridges. They took it out and brought a dirt berm or wrap onto the bridge. Now, in the meantime, all they did was just put a new road off there, down in the river bottom, and used culverts, and that's what we always had access to San Lucas. Needless to say, I didn't get to play hooky for a year or so. One of the questions I've been asked is, why are the bridges painted green? Well, up in Oregon, somehow somebody started it because green was complementary to the surroundings. So now that's why we have the green bridge at San Lucas and the green bridge everywhere else. Then in 1974, I got all this information from a friend of mine. He went, dug up different reports on this. And in 1974, they downloaded to the weight limits to 5 tons. Because, well, right then we had access because we had, by that time the freeway was in. So it wasn't that serious. But today, this bridge is very important to us just because it keeps the slower traffic off the freeway. And that's why we don't want to let it be torn down, or we want to keep it. What else can I say? Also on this bridge, you see it's both the Platte and the Warren type of suspension. And as John said, I don't know neither why and how it came to be. And that's pretty much all I have to say. But, one more other thing. If you do walk across it right now, there's one spot where you can look through and there's a hole going all the way to the river. And I don't know how many patches there are, but the bridge crew would come down here and they'd camp, oh heavens, maybe for a month or so, patching. But they haven't been here for what, a year? Tim? They need to come back.
Bill, I have a question. So we came down when we had the flooding a couple months ago, and they closed it. I know they closed the bridge, I think twice, because of the water was so close to the bottom of the bridge. Have you ever seen a time where the water actually came over the bridge?
it would get you wet. I don't know, was it splashing from it bouncing up, but it was right
Really,
right
right
there.
up underneath it, yeah.
I have some pictures, not to interrupt, but I told Karen and John I got a photo album that my sister Laura made when we lost our 50 acres in a 95 flood. And there's pictures that shows how the water was just about ready to go over the bridge.
Wow.
But the biggest thing, like when it closed the last time, it was the area on the other side,
Yeah, it was flooding over.
and maybe it might have got up like that.
Yeah.
But it was still passable. The road wasn't hurt or harmed in any way.
Bill, do you know why it's two different types of construction?
But one's a plat and one's a worn. But why, I don't know. I don't know why and how come that came about.
Okay, I was just wondering if they ran out of material or something. Or changed contractors, maybe?
So we're gonna walk on the bridge, and you can kind of see that for yourself. And John can point out some of the features of that. Bill is available too. You can ask him some more questions if you'd like. I just think it's really great that he and his family and other farming families have so much experience on this bridge. And I think it is a historic bridge.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can't tear it down because it's got, is that what you told me, John?
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that they can't tear it down because it's historic, which is nice. So we're going to take about 15 minutes. Watch out for the poison oak. Walk down there, and then if you will follow John and Donna, we're going to go to San Ardo, and we're going to have lunch there at the San Ardo Grange. If you get lost, go to San Ardo and look for the water tank. And we will have a sandwich or a burrito for you.
A round of applause.
Sometime.
Yeah. Hey, Bill.
Thank you, Karen. As you're seeing, I brought my cheat sheet, so I get my dates and et cetera closer to being correct. The San Ardo Bridge was built in 1907, but I want to go back 21 years before that and show how it worked toward '07 when the bridge finally started being constructed. So let's go back to 1886 when the railroad was being built south to San Miguel. It arrived in San Ardo, the first train, in August of '86, and what they called at that time the San Bernardo Station. The next day, San Bernardo Station disappeared. It became San Ardo because the railroad already had a San Bernardo Station on one of their lines back east. So it was confusing. So it was San Bernardo for one day. And Meyer Brandenstein is the one that laid the town out because it was on his property where we are today. And he had a map filed with the county in 1887, it was surveyed in '86, and with the county in '87. Also in '86, his foreman, John W. Martin, applied for the San Bernardo post office. And he described it that it was 150 yards west of the railroad from the San Bernardo station. 6 months later, the post office was established as San Bernardo, even though by then the community was San Ardo. So at that time, there was no bridges, no roads. We don't think about it today. We automatically think there were roads. There was no roads. You had to drive through the neighbor's property. If he wanted to disc it up, plow it up, you had no more road. So Meyer Brandenstein was a big pusher from San Ardo to build a bridge. And he would go before the Board of Supervisors and try to convince them it was the thing to be done. Finally, in 1886, they decided to do something, so they got a bond issue up to build a bridge at Soledad and Hilltown, which is Highway 68 bridge today near Spreckles. Well, that didn't satisfy the voters in Monterey County. They wanted more bridges, so it was defeated. 2 years later, then the board proposes that they would build 4 bridges: Hilltown, Soledad, Kings City, as there was at that time, and Bradley. Still no San Oro. So it goes to the voters and they overwhelmingly approve building these 4 bridges. So in August of '88, they signed the contracts for the 4 bridges. And the first bridge that was finished was the one at Hilltown near Spreckles. And they had the big grand celebration in February of 1889. Still no bridge at San Oro. Bradley, no San Oro. So this year, of course, we had the floods. So bridges and floods sort of tie together. Sometimes they battle each other. And so the first, after San Oro was founded, the first wet year was in the winter of 1889 and 90, when King City, I don't know what San Oro had, but King City had over 23 inches of rain. So we know that's a wet year. And the King City Settler, which was before the Rustler, while they were strong, they'd always be writing, "We need bridges, we need bridges." And in the San Oro column, in 1890 in the Settler, well, it says, "We need a bridge." And silliness, it took them 20 to 30 years. We shouldn't have to wait that long. Well, they had to wait. Then in 1890, Brandenstein in February went to the board again and said, "We need roads, roads, roads. We need bridges, bridges, bridges." Nothing happened. Finally, in '05, and I don't know if this had anything to do with it, but Bill Casey was elected supervisor of the old District 4 and took office in '05. And at that time, the newspaper says that all 5 supervisors are putting their attention to a bridge at San Oro. Sad to say, Meyer Brandenstein passed away in '06. In '07, the supervisors approved a bridge for San Oro. So it was built in '07, finished in '08. And in April of '08, they had, as you see these pictures here, you see the processions going across the bridge. They had a special train coming down from Salinas to San Oro with roughly 200 people and the brass band. And they all lined up at the intersection to the left here. At that time, the paper says near the post office site, which is where the post office was at that time. And they marched down to Lone Street, which was the connection to the bridge, across the bridge, and then had a celebration at the picnic grounds, which was across the river and a little bit to the south where there's a large grove of oak trees. At that picnic grounds, there was a raised wooden dance floor. And my brother and I, we would go there and we would run and slide and play on it. Maybe I'm the last one to dance on that floor, I don't know. So, because my dad had the ranch crew tear it down. It was getting in pretty bad shape and getting quite dangerous. So there were 3 main flood eras: 1909, 1911, and 1914. But which took out a lot of bridges across the Salinas River in '09. But what I can read in the papers, I don't see where damage washed out the bridge in San Oro. The San Oro column did say they're hauling dirt and sand to repair the streets in town. So, which isn't bad compared to having a bridge washed out. So now we go to 1911, which, like I say, was a very wet year. King City at that time had 18 inches of rain. So it washed out, first report said it washed out 60 feet of the eastern approach. But later you read where it washed out over 300 feet. And of course there's no way to get across. So they tried throwing a line and they couldn't throw it far enough to get it tied. So they tried tying notes to rocks, throwing the rocks. They couldn't get them far enough. So they went to the schoolhouse, which is roughly where the Catholic Church is today, and took a blackboard off the wall. And they would hold it and they would write big messages on the blackboard so they could communicate to the west side from town. Now, in 1914, why, like I say, a big flood year. But my research is probably 95% from newspapers, some is private correspondence, and some is what I've heard. And as we know, newspapers are not always correct. Uh-oh, a former newspaper person. So, and 1914 is a good example because every year the Rustler publishes the rainfall records for the last whatever years, and always put those out and save them. Sometimes you might want to look at them. So if you look at it, in 1914, by the end of January, it washed the approach out to the San Ardo Bridge. But if you look at the rainfall records, it didn't rain until February and March. So we had a flood before it rained. So, and I went back 3 times to make sure I had it correct in my brain. So my assumption is, of course you shouldn't assume anything, is that they're a month off. They have that in February there was over 8 inches of rain and over 3 inches in March. My guess is it's a month off. They had that 8 inches in January, and that's why the bridge got washed out by the end of January. So it took me a while because things weren't working out. In 1911, I'm going back a little bit to the flood before. Because we had a flood this year, and it flooded where the old SB pump is, which is now the town water supply pump and water supply for San Ardo. Why, it flooded them and flooded the pump house out. And as now, the new bridge, the pipeline runs under the bridge, is connected to it for support. Well, originally, the line came on the first bridge, which is to the south, which would get washed out. So it would break their pipeline. So the railroad would have no water, and of course back then you needed water for steam engines. And not only the bridges washed out for vehicles, actually they called them wagon bridges then because that was your vehicle. The railroad also would get washed out. So the San Ardo Hotel, which is to the south here, the remains of it, well, it would get quite busy because they couldn't leave town. Once they got to San Ardo, that was it. So the folks had to stay. So as the paper would say, San Ardo, when they finally got the railroad where the tracks where they could run the train again, said, well, now San Ardo won't be lively anymore. So, now, the flood of 1914 that I talked about, that the records are a month off, I'd like to read word by word by the county surveyor, Lou Hare. It's like the Public Works Department today. He was the one that would engineer and make sure the bridges were built correctly and so forth. So the Board of Supervisors had a special meeting in February of 1914 because of all the damage to all the bridges going across the Salinas River. And this is a report for the San Ardo Bridge. It's composed of 11 steel spans of 100 feet each on concrete cylinder piers, with 780 feet of pile trestle approach for the total length of 1,850 feet. It was designed by the writer, which was Lou Hare, the county surveyor, and constructed by the Minneapolis Steel and Machinery Company in 1907. The price was $41,800. The damage is about 300 feet of the pile trestle approach is carried away, and many of the floor joists on the upstream side and the fencing were damaged by the drift. The flood went over the floor of this bridge. So if you, when you drive across the bridge and look to the south and see those concrete piers out there, Can you imagine? The water was that high that it went over the floor of that bridge. And where the swimming pool is today, you're driving that street, if you look to your left of the Ponte Rico Creek, you see where it came up and cut right next to the edge. At that time was the county road. That also happened in 1914. And they were afraid it would continue cutting and go toward the school. So they tried to obviously they were successful in stopping them. But when they would build these bridges, as it mentioned here, the wooden pier, trestle, like nowadays, the bridge runs from one side to the other, one abutment to the other. Back then, they would go over the main part of the river, but the approach would be a wooden trestle. So it didn't have the strength that the concrete piers would have out in the main part of the river. So once in a while, it would lose a span, but most of it was happening because of the approaches, the wooden trestles that they built. And the old bridges, of course, the flooring was wood planks. They would have to repair them every 2 or 3 years. Like today, you know, it takes for years. Of course, we're seeing in King City, it takes for years to repair them. So maybe not much has changed. So in 1929 is when they started planning for the new bridge, which is the present bridge. And it opened in 1931. And they had to change the approaches, of course, because I see you drive by today, you came up Malone Street, made a right angle turn, came in front of the Grange, then roughly another right angle turn and headed north to San Lucas. So when they moved it over, of course, they had to completely change the approaches. And they had a lot of accidents on the west side, because if you look to your left, where they have what they could call it the dump station now, where you take your trash, and you see there's a big cut in the hillside there. That's where the highway went up through that cut. And you'd always read in the paper where there was a lot of accidents. The mud sliding off, and maybe a part of the road would slide away. And that road, the original one, is where I still call it the Bernards, where Bernards lived for years. And then behind it is what the old SB house, which is where the pump station is. The highway went between those two buildings. And to the west of those buildings, there's still the original part of the original highway. It's still in place. So I guess that's it. Any questions?